Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to go over the basics of sports nutrition. Let's get started. When we talk about sports nutrition, we're mainly focusing on enhancing your performance as an athlete through improved eating behaviors and making sure that you're consuming the proper amount and the right types of food. In this video, we're going to go over calorie intake, how much food you should be consuming throughout the day. We're also going to go over macronutrients. So what types of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats you should be focusing on consuming through your diet. We'll also look at micronutrients. So this will be the vitamins and minerals you get through your food that help reinforce your immune system, help you to recover, and can also help you prevent injury. And then lastly, in this video, we'll go over hydration, figuring out exactly how much you should be drinking in order to help you stay hydrated throughout the day. We're now going to go over calorie intake. Calorie intake refers to the amount of food you need to be consuming throughout the day to help you maintain your energy and help you perform at your best during training and during matches. Calorie intake is going to be very individual to you, dependent on these specific factors. So your size, if you're taller and heavier, you'll typically need more calories than someone who is smaller and lighter. Your body composition will also affect your calorie intake. So if you are holding on to more muscle mass, that will increase your need to consume calories. The position you're playing, so if you are running around more, you're making more tackles. If you are moving overall more than another person, you'll be increasing your calorie intake. Training load is also going to be a huge factor. So if you're having multiple training sessions throughout the day, or you're having a very hard training session during the day, this will increase your need to intake more food. And also your goals. So if you're trying to put on weight, you're going to need to increase your calorie intake. If you're trying to lose weight and stay lean, you're going to need to decrease your calorie intake. Now, in accordance with training load, it's very important to understand with your training that your activity level is going to greatly affect your calorie intake. So the longer your training sessions are, the more sessions you have throughout the day, and the more intense those sessions are, those will dictate how much food you need to consume. So typically with those harder, longer days, make sure to focus on increasing your consumption of carbohydrates. Compared to easier training days, so if you're having a very easy skill session day or you're having a rest day, you won't need as much food on that day because you won't have to fuel yourself as much compared to those harder days. We're now going to go over macronutrients. The first macronutrient source we're going to go over are carbohydrates. Now, as we said in the previous slide, carbohydrates are going to be our main fuel source during exercise, and especially as that exercise intensity increases. The main reason for this is it's stored in our muscles and liver, and that makes it much easier to access during exercise. So that is why they are our main fuel source. They're much more readily available for us to use in our body. Now, something to understand here is that at rest, when you're not really moving, fats are your main fuel source. But if you think about this as a light switch, your light switch for fat is turned on at rest, but when you're exercising, as that exercise activity starts to increase, the carbohydrate light switch will start to turn on, and it'll get brighter and brighter, while your fat light switch gets dimmer and dimmer. So think about that as the longer and harder you exercise, the more energy you need from carbohydrates, because that carbohydrate light switch keeps getting brighter and brighter. Another thing to note is that there are some very great carbohydrate-rich food sources that you can be consuming throughout your daily food intake. This can include things such as fruits, whole grains, starchy vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes. Now, something to note here is that some of these examples can also give you other macronutrients, not just carbohydrate. So nuts, seeds, and legumes, while they're great in carbohydrate content, they also provide some protein and some fat, which make them a great mixture of macronutrients. Other sources that contain carbohydrates but also proteins and fat include things such as dairy products. So things such as milk, cheese, and yogurts are a great source of not only carbohydrates, but also that mixture of proteins and fats. The next macronutrient we're going to talk about are proteins. Now, proteins are very important because they help us build and repair muscle. So when you're going through those training sessions, you're going through skill sessions, lifting weights, scrimmaging, your body is getting beat up and is going through a lot of damage. Now, in order for you to make adaptations that occur during training, you need to consume proteins in your diet that will then help you build and repair muscle as a response to all this training. And remember, when we talked about sports nutrition, we want to help you get better and perform at your sport. So making these adaptations are going to be very advantageous to you throughout the season because you'll be able to become bigger, faster, and stronger. The next thing that we're going to go over are the last macronutrient, which are fats. Now, something important to note is that there are so-called good and bad fats. Now, when we talk about those good fats, we're talking about unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats, pictured on this left side, are those good fats that can help reduce inflammation that are typically caused by training. Now, something to note is that you can get unsaturated fats from a lot of fish sources, one of those sources being salmon. You can also get them in nuts, so almonds, walnuts, pistachios, peanuts, things like that. Other great sources of unsaturated fats are avocado and seeds, olive oil, you name it. Now, when we talk about the bad fats, which are saturated fats, you'll typically see that in very highly processed foods. You can also see it in some animal products when you have a lot of fat on a piece of red meat or steak. So you're going to want to stick to consuming unsaturated fats, these good fats, throughout your diet. Another thing to know about fats is that it can be consumed to help you meet your high energy demand as an athlete. Now, typically with an athlete's lifestyle, you are training a lot throughout the day, and because you're training so much, you're burning through a lot of calories. Now, in order to stop you from losing weight, in order to stop you from having low energy throughout the day, consuming fats can definitely help you reach that calorie intake that you need. And something to note, as we previously stated in the previous slides, fats typically have more calories per gram compared to carbohydrates or fats. So just to stress, make sure that you're getting in your fats, but also make sure that you have a balanced diet of your macronutrients. So don't ever exclude one macronutrient. Focus on consuming a good amount of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. The next thing we're going to go over are micronutrients. When we talk about micronutrients, here we are referring to vitamins and minerals. Now, although we need different quantities of vitamins and minerals throughout our diet, you'll tend to consume much higher amounts of vitamins compared to much smaller amounts of minerals. The important thing about micronutrients are that they optimize the way your body functions. So if you are consuming the right amount of vitamins and minerals, this will definitely help you recover from your training, and it'll also help you reinforce your immune system so you're not getting sick as often. And this is going to be very important because you don't want to be getting sick and becoming unable to train and perform. Another great thing about micronutrients is that it can help you maintain exercise output for longer durations. So making sure that all your vitamin and mineral quantities are regulated and in the proper range will definitely help you optimize your body function. Something else to note is that it'll prevent deficiencies and reduce risk of injury. So when you're consuming the right amount of vitamins and minerals, such an example where you are consuming calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin D, all of these types of vitamins and minerals would help you maintain your bone health. And that would be very important for helping you improve your durability and lowering your risk of injury, such as bone fractures and things like that. The last thing we're going to go over is hydration. Now, we always stress the importance of hydration in order to help with exercise performance. And the reason for this is that hydration is going to be a key component for helping us sweat and helping us cool our bodies during exercise. Now, you'll probably notice that when you're exercising, when you are sprinting, when you're jumping, when you're doing something at max intensity, your body might start to heat up very, very fast. Now, in order to stop yourself from heating up too much, being well hydrated will definitely help you sweat and help you cool in order to allow you to keep performing at your best. Now, something else to note about hydration is that it's very important for helping maintain performance, but also helping prevent injury and muscle cramping. So typically, dehydration will lower your ability to keep cool, but it'll also increase your risk of injury, and it can also increase your risk of such things as muscle cramping. Now, if you are dehydrated, just remember that you won't be able to perform at the same level that you typically would be able to perform if you were properly hydrated. So always make sure that you are staying hydrated throughout the day. It's important to note that such factors like environment can definitely affect your need for hydration. So if you go out to train on a certain day and you notice that it's hotter or more humid than normal, typically these environmental factors will cause you to sweat more. Now, when you sweat more, you tend to lose more water through your sweat, and you'll also tend to lose more electrolytes such as sodium when you sweat. Now, it's important to understand that the main electrolyte you lose is sodium. So if you are the type of person who is consuming a banana, and bananas are rich in potassium, if you're consuming a banana to try to stop muscle cramping or things like that, you might want to look into the amount of sodium or salt that you're eating throughout the day, because this is a better determinant of making sure that you are not cramping and also making sure that you're well hydrated and you're holding on to water better. So key takeaways here is that a hotter environment will increase your risk of dehydration. And in order to stave off the effects of dehydration, focus on consuming water throughout the day and making sure you're consuming sodium or salt throughout the day within your meals. A great way to monitor your hydration status is by looking at the color of your urine and looking at the amount of times or the frequency that you pee throughout the day. Now with the urine color chart, you want to aim for this hydrated part of the chart, so that means your pee should be slightly clear with a tint of yellow. If it's very clear, that means you're overhydrated, so if it's the same color as water. Now if your pee is the color of beer or apple juice, that's a sign that you're probably getting dehydrated, so if it's very yellow or starts to turn brown. In terms of frequency, or the amount of times that you actually pee and urinate, if you are peeing 3 to 4 times within an hour, or even once every hour, that might be a sign that you are overhydrated. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're peeing only once every 3 hours, that might actually indicate that you are severely dehydrated. The recommended range for urine frequency should be between the indicators of overhydration and severe dehydration that were previously stated. So on average, you should be aiming to urinate at least once every 1 to 3 hours, or somewhere within that range. At this point, you're probably wondering how much you should be drinking. This is all going to depend on you as an individual. So some individuals are heavy sweaters and very salty sweaters, so they might need more hydration throughout the day compared to someone who's a lighter sweater and doesn't lose as much sodium throughout their sweat. But in general, before training, you should focus on 2 to 3 hours before 16 ounces of water and 15 minutes before 8 ounces of water. Key thing to note is that hydration should be focused on throughout the day. So don't be playing catch up right before practice. Make sure that you're starting early, drink early in the morning, and continue your hydration plan throughout the day, spacing out your consumption of water and not just drinking it in one go. Now, during training, a key takeaway here is that you should be drinking enough to mitigate your losses of body weight. So you might be familiar with weighing yourself right before a training session and then weighing yourself right after. A key indicator that you did a great job of hydrating during your training session is if you weighed about the same amount after your session as you did going into it. If you lost a lot of body weight right after your training session, that's an indicator that you should probably up your hydration for training. Now, after training, you want to focus on recovery and recovering a lot of that water lost through sweat and the amount of electrolytes that you lost through sweat. So after training, focus on drinking 16 to 24 ounces for every 1 pound lost, or 16 to 24 ounces for every hour after training. You might be on the higher end if you're one of those heavier and salty sweaters. You might be on the lower end if you don't sweat as severely. We've come to the end of our Basics of Sports Nutrition video. Make sure that you stay tuned for the next webinar topic, Fueling for Training.